Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter Stories 2. And in this one, I want to put together a quick, handy guide for you on my top 5 monsters that I think you should look out for as you're playing throughout the game. Now, to be clear, this is not the top 5 best monsters. These are simply monsters that I think you should definitely consider adding to your team as you're progressing throughout the game. They're things that you will encounter, they're things that will fill necessary slots in your team, and they are Monsties that are, generally speaking, pretty reliable that you can use for a good chunk of the game. In fact, some of these stayed in my team throughout the entirety of the game, so they are definitely worthwhile. Now, yes, of course, this game has a ton of monsters. Use whatever you want, but if you're looking for some potential useful team picks, then here is my list. In at number 1, we have Nagagore. Nagagore is a monster you will encounter relatively early on in the game, so you don't necessarily have to go too far for this one. And Nagagore is useful for a number of different reasons. Obviously, when you're speccing out your team, you want to try and have a good coverage of both speed, power, and technical. Nagagore is by default a speed monstie. But on top of that, it also has a very useful ability called Stealth. Now, yes, as you're playing throughout the game, you'll want to be fighting lots of Monsties, leveling up, things like that. But sometimes you do just want to get to your destination as quickly as possible, and Nagagore having Stealth allows you to go invisible, meaning when you're running through dens to try and get eggs, or just want to get from point A to point B without constantly running into monsters, it is incredibly useful. Then moving on from there to number 2 is ZINOGRE, a monster you'll encounter a little bit later on, but you can get it as early as the snowy area. It is initially encountered as a royal monster, meaning it will be a tough fight, but tough does not mean impossible. You can win this, you can in fact make it retreat. In fact, if you want a guide on how to retreat this monster, Paradise Central is putting together some royal monster guides on his channel. I will link them down below so you can check that out. But ZINOGRE is really good because he also fills that speed spot. In fact, he's probably one of the best speed options going forward, so he's kind of a good reliable monster you can use for a good chunk of the game. However, on top of that, from an exploration point of view, he also has the ability Jump. That's of course an ability you will have on your Velocidrome to begin with, which you can use to jump across platforms. And while you don't necessarily need this, in fact it's important to state that when you're kind of exploring the maps, you never need these abilities to get to a destination. It's only if you're trying to go off the beaten track to get things like chests or other things like that. The sort of Golden Line story path will never require those abilities, but he does have Jump, so you can use that when exploring the nests. Number 3 for me is Nursilla, partly because I really like this monster, but also partly because this is a good technical monster and it kind of covers a few different bases. It is a very cool monster because some of the abilities do have the chance to put enemies to sleep, and of course if an enemy goes to sleep, then you get an increased crit rate. That happens both off of some of its special moves and off of its kinship attack. However, on top of that, it also can climb vines, so again, giving you a good cross-section across your team. We have a monster that can stealth, we have a monster that can jump, and now we have a monstie that can climb. So you have quite a lot of the options that are sort of available to you. You'll often see vines where you can climb up and get to chests and things, so we've now got a decent coverage, we've got some speed, some technical, and the ability to explore. Next up in number 4 is Zamtrios. Zamtrios fills another one of the technical slots, so again, a pretty good pick. Plus, Zamtrios has a lot of health. He is a very good tanky monster. Of course, he's ice type as well. He has some very nice moves, but sometimes when you're doing some of the fights, there'll be situations where you know you're going to get hit by a very powerful attack, and Zamtrios having a good health pool can often just be a monster, even if it's a type mismatch, that can take a hit without dying. So having a nice tanky monster in your team, just something you can swap to in the event you know you're going to have to sort of take that big damage, is useful. Plus, added bonus, he can swim. So once again, another exploration element that is available to us if he's in our team. Finally, to fill the power slot, of course this is a list of 5, there are of course more options and stuff, but one of the early game monsters that is relatively good in your power slot is Jade Barroth. Jade Barroth of course you'll encounter in the snowy area. It is a good tanky monster, decent sort of health pool, decent attack, decent crit rate. It is just a good all-round monster. Plus, it also has the ground dive ability, which is the one where you can basically burrow into ground, go in different tunnels, and again, that gives you sort of more exploration tools. There are, of course, plenty of other things, so this won't cover every single possible exploration permutation, but Jade Barroth is a good, safe, reliable power pick. So, there you have it. That's a little rundown on a few monsters you might want to consider looking out for as you're playing throughout the game. Of course, once you get to endgame, do whatever the hell you want. You can pick a full team of Aptonoth if you really want. I'm definitely going to be doing some big switches in my team once I get to kind of getting all the monsters that I want. But for the time being, those are some things that if you're wondering what might help you out, then those are some things that I would suggest. Anyway, keep it locked in for plenty more stories content. Of course, also make sure you're checking out 269 and Paradise Central's channels. They are linked down below. They've got plenty more stories content. So if you're playing through the game, you're excited for it, then definitely keep it locked on all fronts. If you want to catch more from us at Arekkz Gaming, don't forget you can catch the guys 269 and Paradise Central streaming over on Twitch weekdays, playing a variety of games. If you guys want to jump in, tune in, watch, and even join in, then make sure you check them out. The links to those are in the description box down below. And of course, you can join the Discord to get involved in all of the discussions.